Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Hello, Northlanders. It's Thursday, September 19th. I'm Wyatt Buckner with your Duluth News Tribune Minute, presented by Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union.
The average MPECU member saves over $785 a year in better rates and lower fees. And with MPECU, every ATM is your ATM. With their free checking program, you get ATM fee reimbursements at any ATM anywhere in the U.S. Check out Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union's services online at mpecu.com or visit their offices in downtown Duluth, Arrowhead Road, or Miller Trunk Highway.
We'll start off today with the business beat with Duluth News Tribune business reporter Brielle Bredston.
Black Label on the move. Black Label Collective, a professional tattoo and piercing shop currently located at 217 North 59th Avenue West, announced it will be moving to a new spot on Tuesday, September 24th. Tattoo artists Alec Pauling and Dick Davis, along with piercer Ashley Minkinen, first opened the studio in Spirit Valley in June of 2021 after working at Absolute Body Art in West Duluth, citing the need for more space. Although the new address has yet to be divulged, they're requesting for understanding and patience from their patrons as they make the switch. Duluth has gained a new coffee shop. Studio Cafe Duluth recently opened in the former Dream Cloud Coffee Roasters space at 102 West Superior Street. The menu features coffee, tea, and food paired with events and live music. It is also open to groups as a regular meeting space. The new coffee shop boasts a creative concept offering a place for patrons to work on traditional arts and craft mediums such as painting, writing, crochet, music, and more. It's home to a century-old Royal Model 10 typewriter available for use to craft a poem, note, or love letter. Unwind at the airport. The annual Unwind Tasting Gala is Wednesday, September 25th at Duluth International Airport. The event is hosted by Hermantown Area Chamber of Commerce to showcase a variety of wine, beer, and food samples from 11 local vendors. There will be a silent auction, a wine pull, souvenir wine glasses, and music from DMC Entertainment. Tickets are $40 to $50 on the Chamber's website. I'm Brielle Bredston. Send me some more business tips at bbredston@duluthnews.com.
This week, the News Tribune and the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce hosted a candidate forum at the Garden in Canal Park. Today's audio comes from Minnesota House District 3B incumbent Representative Natalie Zeleznikar, a Republican, and DFL challenger and retired Judge Mark Munger, who debated Tuesday. We'll be back here again tomorrow with more audio to help you make an informed decision at polls this November.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dan Fanning. I am the Vice President of Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of our Chamber Foundation, and our partners at Duluth News Tribune, we just really want to thank you for being here this morning. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, and we've got a really good turnout, so thank you for being here. We're going to get to the candidates in just a second, but we want to start out by thanking the candidates. We know this is a busy time of the year. It takes great courage to run for office, so thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to answer these questions and to do this publicly, so thank you very much. As you walked in, you received a piece of paper about the Civility Project. We're proud to work with the Duluth Superior Community Foundation, Area Foundation, and make sure this is civilly certified, which means, and I know this won't be a problem here, but just to state the obvious, we want this to be an informational forum. This is not meant to be a contentious debate. There really shouldn't be much gotcha questions for those candidates who have gone through the endorsement process with the DNT before. The questions will be familiar, but this is really our opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, and we want to do that in a really respectful and just professional way. So if the audience can help with that, we'd be grateful. We know the candidates have agreed to do that as well. So again, on behalf of the Chamber Foundation, it's a pleasure to work with the Duluth News Tribune. Thank you for being here. This is being recorded and will be online both on the Chamber website as well as the DNT website. And again, we appreciate the partnership. So over to you, Chuck.
Thanks very much, Dan. Welcome, Mark and Natalie. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everyone who's turned out this morning. I want to point out both candidates. The woman in the front here is our timekeeper, and so she will hold up signs letting you know how much time you have left, and we appreciate your respectfulness of our time limits. We will open with some opening remarks. We'll have some closing statements at the end, a minute on openings, a minute and a half, a little longer at the end, and then answers of a minute each with rebuttals at the direction and discretion of Dan and myself. I want to mention also that these forums, these candidate forums, help to inform the News Tribune's editorial endorsements. Our endorsements are never an attempt to tell people how to vote, but the goal and the aim is to spark conversation and spark thought, spark consideration, because of course the most important decisions are the decisions that voters make on November 5th at their polling place. With that, I think we can get started. As Dan said, we're civility certified, so please withhold applause, audible gasps, whatever it might be. At the end, we'll allow some time for applause. But during the forum, we ask for civility and respectfulness. So with that, we flipped a coin, and Representative Zeleznikar, you get to speak first. Begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're seeking re-election.
Hi, I'm Rep. Zeleznikar, your state representative. Did you know Minnesota government increased your taxes the last 2 years by $10 billion, and the $18 billion surplus is gone? You expected a $2,000 rebate, and that didn't happen. And meanwhile, everywhere you turn, costs are higher. You have less money in your wallet. Many are working 2 to 3 jobs. Government grew 40%. And $250 million in fraud was determined by auditors that for feeding kids in Minneapolis-St. Paul that never happened, flushing hard-earned money down the toilet. You deserve better, and that's why I'm running again. I support a balanced energy policy. We cannot have wind and solar only as mandated by extreme politicians. You can't imagine a life without natural gas, diesel, and propane, and neither can I. I'm running to run for you. I work for you. And I'm going to be committed to high energy and passion to serve.
Thank you very much. Mark Munger.
Thank you. Thank you to the DNT and the Chamber for having us here, and thank you for all showing up. As Dan said, on a beautiful day, we could be all doing something else, but you're here, and I think that's very important. So who am I? I was a district court judge for 20 years as an active judge, 3 years as a senior judge. Before that, I was a prosecutor and attorney. I've been active in the Hermantown and Proctor communities for all of my adult life. My wife served on the Hermantown School Board for 15 years. My son, Matt, who's here, currently serves on that board. Why am I running? Very simply, I want to bring integrity, civility, passion back to politics. I don't like where we are. I don't like the discourse we find ourselves in, and I'm doing this for our grandchildren. That's why I'm running for the Minnesota House.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you both. So we have 9 formal questions before we get to closing comments. Like Chuck mentioned, each question we're going to ask for about a 1-minute response if possible, and if there's a need for a rebuttal, we'll certainly offer that as well. But we'll just jump in with the first question, and the first question goes to you first, Mark. And the question is, if elected or re-elected in the representative's case, what would be your top priorities specifically in regards to what you'd want to do for your district in District 3B?
Well, first of all, I want to bring back bonding. We didn't get that done this last session, and there are big projects in Two Harbors, Proctor, Rice Lake that need attention and need state bonding to help them get off the ground. Second of all, I want to work on the issues of child care, elder care, and health care. I think we've made some strides in the child care area with what we've done in the last few years in the legislature, and with also the federal government is doing in terms of tax credits. But I think, we're very good at taking care of those of us that have private health insurance. We're very good at taking care of people that are on Minnesota Care. We're not very good about taking care of the youngest in our fold and the oldest in their fold. So those are some of the priorities that I think I'd like to get involved with. And of course, the economy is always a huge issue. I am not a prove-it-first guy. I want to see mining in northeastern Minnesota, and I want to work on doing it environmentally safe, sound, and in keeping with our values. Yeah.
Thank you. Representative?
I think the fundamental issue for this region is making Minnesota affordable. Everything we're dealing with is that it's not affordable. We passed mandates the last 2 years that have strapped businesses, strapped school districts, and strapped childcare. We have 50% less family childcare, and centers are closing right now. It's just been in the paper. We did not choose to allocate our money with $18 billion to the core services. We funded a train for $194 million. We have roads with potholes. And the basic bottom line is the economy is not thriving when the food shelf line has quadrupled. We can do better.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you. As you both know, of course, the House, the Senate, and the Governor's office are all controlled by the DFL right now. Our question is, are you willing to rise above party politics for the good of your constituents? And how can voters be assured that yours will be a voice of compromise and cooperation, assuming that you want it to be? Natalie, we'll start with you.
I think I demonstrated compromise. I was one of the only Republicans selected on the conference committee. We had a 1,400-page omnibus bill with 9 bills in the last minutes of session that no one could see because the system crashed. So, yes, I demonstrated working across the line. I was on the workforce committee. I fought hard to make sure we got the trades for our high schools, EMT program in a high school program in Two Harbors, and another bill to expand nursing so that we have critical nurse shortages that are affecting our hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living, group homes, and home care, that we have nurses. We need 500,000 and we're graduating 50,000, and I got those across the finish line in bipartisan fashion, and I will do the same if I'm going back to St. Paul.
Thank you. Mark?
So the answer is yes. I'm an effective advocate, but I'm also a good listener. I can listen to both sides of an argument. That's what I did for 23 years as a district court judge. That's something that a skill set I bring to St. Paul. With respect to my campaign, you have to know that my campaign manager is a former small business owner. My treasurer is a former small business owner. Both are far more conservative than I am, and I listen to folks. Those folks and other folks around me give me some balance as to who I am and what I think. And I think with respect to this particular race, I'm better qualified, better able to work across the aisle with folks. I've worked with a lot of the Senate Republicans on judicial issues previously as a judge on different committees with the judiciary. So I think I'm very well suited to reach across the aisle and bring us back to common sense politics.
Thank you both very much. Natalie, just as a follow-up, would you say you are a voice of compromise and cooperation, and why would you say so?
I would say there's a reason Chair Jung selected me to be on the conference committee, because I demonstrated that on the workforce committee and brought millions to northeastern Minnesota that benefit both parties and work across party lines for the best interest of our schools, our businesses, and our community. I've been selected to the EMS Task Force for Ambulance and the Aging Task Force in a bipartisan way. We have the largest aging population in the state, and I think there's a reason they selected me as a first-term representative, because I do work with solutions, and I've been doing that my entire career. I never knew who independent, Democrat, or Republicans were, and I solved problems for the people. Same way I got tabs for people with salvage vehicles. I worked with the State Department to get that problem solved, and now we have businesses that are allowing inspections in their sites so people can get their tabs. And why do they need salvage vehicles? Because the price of vehicles are now an 84-month loan.
Thanks. And Mark, I want to follow up with you as well. Being a voice of compromise, being a voice of cooperation requires civility, requires relationships, and yet I'm seeing ads on TV attacking your opponent, attacking the incumbent. I'm not sure if they're your ads or ads done on your behalf or what, but given that they're out there, how can you assure voters that, yeah, you are reasonable, you are willing to work with both sides?
First of all, I'll make this one promise to everyone in this room and everyone that watches this or listens to it. You'll never see a single negative ad by Mark Munger against Natalie Zeleznikar. It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. It'll never happen. This campaign started off with third parties attacking me very early on in the campaign about my judicial record. And I'll put my judicial record up against anyone's. For 23 years, I served the residents of this part of the state of Minnesota, was reelected 3 times by over 95, 96% of the vote. So the negative ads are not mine, they're third parties. We can't control them, we can't know them. In addition, I'm getting third-party attacks just as well. And again, Representative Zeleznikar has no control over theirs. I don't blame her for them, but you'll not see that from me. So in terms of compromise, I can reach across the aisle and work with Republicans, and I can represent Republicans who don't vote for me.
Thank you both very much. Dan?
Question 3 is about the budget, and in particular about the budget surplus that the state saw again last year. As you know, it was another big budget surplus. None of it, none of it was returned to taxpayers. Instead, we saw a lot of record spending in some cases. The size of government, state government grew approximately about 40%. In your opinion, is this the wise use of tax dollars? Is spending out of control, and or what can be done about it? And we'll start with you, Mark.
Well, I wasn't there for the discussions, so I can't tell you what went into all of the discussions and the spending that was earmarked. We did make a huge investment in education. I know my opponent is going to talk about expanding the Department of Education, but we did a lot of things for on the ground educators and our school systems with that budget surplus money. We did a lot of things for young families. We did child care. We did a number of very important things. Were the numbers exactly where they should have been? Perhaps not. Should the rebate have been bigger? Maybe. I wasn't there for those discussions. But you can be assured that I'm going to be fiscally sound, I'm going to be fiscally adept, I'm not going to be spending money and wasting money from taxpayers. My biggest concern is taxing seniors and retired military and folks out of their homes by property taxes. So that's going to be something I'm going to keep a sharp eye looking at, because I certainly don't want that to happen. And it's not necessarily true that there was not money returned to the taxpayers. $3 billion went back to the taxpayers of this state.
Thank you, Mark. Natalie, same question.
Minnesota's unaffordable. We had a message that said, by Democrats delivering for you. I'll tell you what it delivered. It delivered a historic budget. We had a historic $18 billion surplus, and we now have historic layoffs, and we have historic cuts by the tune of millions. Every school district in 3B is facing layoffs or budget cuts. This is not sustainable. They chose to grow government by 40%. Civility and common sense, I don't think were used. I mean, we have daycares closing in record numbers. If I'm on the Workforce Committee, Children and Family Committee, Health and Human Services. If we don't have childcare, you can't go to work. Families are struggling, and absolutely, choices were made, and the core things that government should have focused on, we're failing on right now. And that's that is absolute fact.
Okay, thank you both.
Thanks, Dan. Let's talk about the bonding bill. As you mentioned, did not get done last year. It was supposed to be, the focus of a session in the last year. What went wrong in your mind, first of all, and what were some of the big misses for District 3B? 1 minute each. We'll begin with Natalie Zeleznikar.
I supported bonding in 2023. 2024 was chaos. We had a senator out of session for over a week. We were held up. We couldn't get the job done for the people of the state or northeastern Minnesota. We had 11 hours where the Senate wouldn't show up over the Uber bill. They were negotiating and bantering back and forth. So what happened is a 1,400 page went at the 11th hour, and the Senate couldn't get they ran out of time. The gavel hit at midnight, and there was no bonding bill. So it should have happened. It can happen. And I have signed on to the bonding projects to expand utilities for housing for Proctor. And Rice Lake is waiting for, we got it done in 23 for Rice Lake. And we've gotten many of the jobs done, and we have more to do. But doing the work of the people in the 11th hour with 9 omnibus bills and the system crashes and you can't view it and we can't view it is not running with democracy. We didn't see that at the last session, and we can do better.
Thanks. Mark, on the bonding bill?
Obviously, in a bonding year, the bonding is crucial for our infrastructure in the state of Minnesota. The fact that it didn't get done, I think, falls squarely on the shoulders of the Republican Party of the state of Minnesota. They refused to negotiate bonding. They wanted to have the ERA taken out of any consideration on the table for any kind of legislation. Those two things are separate in my mind and can easily be separated. The Republicans refused to separate those two things. And so, yes, Rice Lake didn't get what they asked for. Two Harbors School District, Lake Superior School District didn't get what they asked for in the bonding bill. They're not going to get everything because that's not how bonding works. We all have a finite pie that we have to split up. Proctor did not get its public works that it needed. So those things failed. And I place that blame squarely on the Republican Party's shoulders.
Thank you. The question was also asking the biggest misses for your district. Mark, you hit on a couple of examples. Natalie, what were, in your mind, what were some of the biggest misses with no bonding bill for District 3B specifically?
From my perspective, it was housing and expanding utilities and infrastructure for Proctor. We got it done for Rice Lake. We got the land transfer done in 23 for bonding for Two Harbors to allow for more development too, and I think that was a huge miss. The reality is Democrats had the House, Senate, and the governor. They could have ran the show, and they did how they wanted. The Senate never took up the ERA. If they wanted to, they would have. They did not. And so bonding could have happened and should have happened, and we should have been discussing it, and that unfortunately didn't happen. But the Democrats had full control of the gavel. They controlled how it was going to run, and we can do better, and I suspect it will happen differently in 2025.
Thanks. And Mark, you clearly lay the blame at the Republicans' feet. Does the DFL bear any blame, though, or any discredit for it not happening?
Like I said, Chuck, I wasn't there. But as I understand the situation from the news reports and from talking to folks that were there, what actually happened was the Republicans basically refused to talk bonding at the end of the session, and that basically killed it. So that's the history as I understand it. That's the history that I've read. That's the history I've been given. So I do place the blame for that bonding bill not getting done on the shoulders of the Republicans, the Republican leadership.
Chuck, we're doing okay on time. Do you mind if I do a quick follow-up to that? Just
Please feel free.
very selfishly on behalf of the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce, when you talk about a bonding bill, we've had a couple of priorities now that have actually been in the bonding bill last couple of years that weren't passed. One was the 148th Fighter Wing, getting them a hangar that they desperately need to keep their men and women safe. Another is another regional ask is the airport tower. So I just mentioned those. I know there's others as well. But whoever is in office next year, are you planning to pick up on some of those notes that were last year that were in the bonding bill and running with those? Would you support those kinds of projects, and or are there other priorities that you might be supporting? And again, candidly, I'm asking selfishly, but those are, of course, regional priorities that also have a federal match. So millions of dollars are sitting there unspent now, and if we don't get some state dollars for them, we could actually potentially lose some of that federal match. So if you wouldn't mind just addressing that, I'd appreciate it.
Anytime we can leverage federal money as a match is a good thing for northeastern Minnesota. We need federal partners, and we have strong United States senators here who are willing to step up to the plate and help us. So in terms of the airport, yeah, whatever's needed at the airport to keep us into the 21st century, not the 20th century, is an ask that should be supported. Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you. Representative?
I signed on bills that we're talking about and was hoping that they would pass, and unfortunately, as we all know, it did not. And so what I'm told as a first-term official is that we've never seen a session like we had in the last 2 years. And so I think the decorum will be different and should be different going forward. And making sure we support northeastern Minnesota. I voted for bonding in 2023, and we got a lot done for northeastern Minnesota. And I will continue to vote for bonding for District 3B because we need to take care of our infrastructure. Whether it's education, roads and bridges, the 148th, the airport tower, that is a bipartisan issue in my opinion, and we need to make sure we stay focused on that, and I will be 100% committed to doing that in 2025.
Thank you both. That's a great segue to our next question, question 5. Again, somewhat budget related, but specifically around public education. You both have mentioned this briefly, but as we all know, some of our local public education schools are suffering right now financially. What could the state do to invest more in public education? Do you feel like there should be more investment in public education, and how do you plan to prioritize that moving forward? Mark, we'll begin with you.
Sure. So I think we made a historic investment in public education this last session. What more can be done? I'm not sure, because you have to look, as I said, there's a finite pot here that we have to deal with. And so you're going to have asks, as you just talked about. Bonding's a little bit different, but there's going to be other asks from other facets of society and from our government. You know, in this district, and Representative Zeleznikar knows this very well, it's a very big district that covers a lot of different communities. And all those communities are going to have things that they want assistance with from the state of Minnesota outside of bonding. And so if you're talking about increasing education, I want to be at the table to look at it and say, okay, what is this going to get us? Why are we doing this? What have we done with the resources that we put on the table last session? So the answer is, I'm not just going to give a blank check, even though education has endorsed me as their candidate of choice.
Thank you. Representative?
I was very disappointed. My dad was my middle school principal. I was extremely disappointed to see what happened for Minnesota education. We are not a shining star. We're now 19th in the U.S. 50% of our kids can read at grade level. When my kids were in third grade, over 80% could read at grade level. And let's be clear, every book is banned if a kid can't read. There is no greater discrimination than not being able to read. You are not going to have a pathway for prosperity for an income. And that is really concerning to me. And it's not our educators' fault. They were strapped with mandates. They had zero flexibility at a school district to use the money as they needed. And we had $2.2 billion that Republicans wanted to put in with less mandates. And if they would have followed that plan, we wouldn't have multi-millions in layoffs or budget cuts for our districts. We can do better and we should do better. And that is what I supported. And the reality is that we have an unsustainable thing. Taxes are based on what happens at a school district, city, and county. And it's yet to be determined.
Great. Thank you both.
Thanks. As with education, housing, another critical need in Minnesota, pretty much everywhere. What can the state, or what should the state be doing to help communities create more housing that's affordable at all income levels, not just low-income housing? Representative Zeleznikar, we'll start with you.
Again, it comes down to our energy plan. Wind and solar is driving our energy. That initiative is driving our energy plan and the cost through the roof. And we haven't seen the ceiling of the costs. So how much does everyone want to pay for energy? How much do you want to pay when you get gas? If we can get gas. We cannot live in northeastern Minnesota without natural gas, propane, diesel. The price it costs for us to haul our groceries across in trucking and airplanes and how we deliver our goods, we have to do reasonable initiatives. And we haven't been doing that in the last 2 years. So I believe we can do better. And housing, we have 100,000 homes that we need in the state of Minnesota. I focused on getting the trades back in the high school. If we don't have people that know how to build a house, we are not going to be able to build businesses or homes. I passed bills, I wrote bills that brought a regional trade center for Proctor, Esco, and Hermantown, which will be innovation for the trades.
Thank you. Mark Munger, the question is about helping to create more housing.
Sure. So with respect to housing, that's a big topic. It's a big issue. It's a big picture situation, because you have to have federal partnership with the state. You have to have local partnership with the state. I am not in favor of widespread state zoning relative to housing. I think, as a former prosecutor, former city attorney, most localities are very well adept at doing their own zoning and making sure that there's housing available within the zones. We do need to do a lot better. Anecdotally, I have a son who lives at my home. He's got a great job, he's full-time, he's welcome to stay as long as he wants, as so many of us know, but he can't find, even though he has a decent full-time job, he can't find affordable housing here in the Duluth area. And that's just something that we have to address. Not just low-income housing, but affordable housing, both in apartments and in our buying our first home. And that's one of the things that Kamala Harris is talking about, and I agree with her.
Okay, thanks. As a follow-up, Representative Zeleznikar, can you explain a little more how energy translates to creating housing?
The fundamental base and the common denominator is the cost to produce the goods, the cost to deliver the goods, and then we serve the goods. So here's the deal. I mean, we have to have affordable energy so we can make the products in the most affordable way. If we have 20, 30% increases in the electricity just in the building we're in right now, everything you buy when you come here is likely going to cost more, and we're seeing that. And so it's no different in the housing market. It's a fundamental Econ 101. You have to have affordable energy to drive the economy, for housing, for business expansion, for the schools to thrive, for all of us to thrive. And that's what I'm committed to. The all or none mentality is hurting us. 100% mandates are hurting us in education, they're hurting us in housing, and they're hurting us on energy. We have to have a diversified plan, and that's what I will do.
Thanks. Mark, as long as energy has come up, I don't believe we have a question on it on today's list. So what is your position on the green transition and energy and as a whole?
I'll be very candid. I mean, I've been screened, and I'm sure Representative Zeleznikar has gotten as many or more surveys from different endorsing bodies across the scope of whatever there is in politics, from labor unions to environmental groups, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been very candid about discussing our energy transition. Climate change is real. We need to address it. We need to stop burning coal. We need to get away from fossil fuels. But with that comes a caveat. How do you get there? And particularly with the lifestyle of Northeast Minnesota. You know, I own my own four-wheeler. I own an outboard motor. I own actually two. And part of our lifestyle up here is based upon fossil fuels for recreation. So how do we get there? It's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be in a week. But we can get there. And we got to do it with common sense, prudence, and with the understanding that this is a world we want to leave for our grandchildren.
Thank you both very much. Dan?
Question 7 is a bit of a piggyback on that last question around housing, but it's really more about population growth. As we see in other regional hubs like Rochester and some parts of the Twin City are starting to grow at a faster rate, we're seeing a little bit of progress in Duluth, and I say Duluth, I really the Duluth area, including the area that you'd represent. What more do you feel like the state could do to help foster that? When we're talking about, in addition to housing, economic development, possibly permitting reform, other issues that the state could be involved with to help grow our population and bring some of those good paying jobs back to the Northland. We'll start with you, Mark.
Sure. So we've got some exciting things happening up here. I've said it before during this forum, and I'll say it again, I'm not a prove it first guy. So with respect to copper nickel, I'm willing to take a look at New Range, which used to be Polymet, but they've changed their name now, and find out and figure out whether that's feasible within our environmental consciousness, whether we can do that here in northeastern Minnesota. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I'm open to it. We have the helium discovery up by Babbitt. That's going to drive jobs, drive a new industry, brand new industry. In fact, the legislature's having to figure out how to regulate it because we don't have it. We don't have oil and gas here, and that's a whole other issue. And so recently we discovered that there is a titanium and nickel deposit north of Boulder Lake. Another opportunity, perhaps, as long as we do it sensibly and with the environment and our grandchildren in mind. So I want to create jobs here. I've lived here virtually my whole life. My family lives here. I want jobs for Northeast Minnesota, and I'm going to work for them.
Great, thank you. Representative?
Again, when we create jobs in northeastern Minnesota, we avoid the billboard that happened in the 80s, the last one here, turn the lights off. The reality is, when we have jobs, we have a strong commercial tax base. And when we have a strong commercial tax base in our communities, the burden for all of us in this room for our taxes, whether it's property taxes and the list goes on for all the rest, go down. and that's just fact. I went to Babbitt with Senator Hochschild to see the helium, with the researchers that have been developing. It's phenomenal opportunities for us to grow in this region. I've always said I'm for mining. It makes no sense to me why we wouldn't, if we're going to go the EV route, that we wouldn't be doing things here. We have OSHA standards. We shouldn't be importing things from countries that do child labor, slave labor, and do not have any of the environmental standards. We're one world. We're one planet. And yet we have to have affordable energy that affects 100% of us in this room while still making the environment better, which includes a diversified energy plan.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. I think I'll skip our next question. You both kind of touched on it on the last one. That's okay with you, Dan? We'll move on to abortion or reproductive rights. Of course, a huge hot button issue this past session, this past year in Minnesota and elsewhere as a result of the Supreme Court ruling. What can Minnesotans expect of this coming session on this topic in St. Paul, and what do you support? Mark, we'll start with you.
Well, 100%, I am for a woman's right to choose. I am 100% in support of reproductive freedom for women. I don't want Ted Cruz in the doctor's office or any Supreme Court justice in the doctor's office with a woman making healthcare decisions for her or her fetus. With respect to what we need to do, right now, Minnesota, because there is a district court case in the federal system that basically took away, we had some parental notification or judicial bypass requirements that were in our statute, which I actually had to deal with as a judge. It's by court case that is sitting out there. That can change. That can be appealed, it can be overridden, etc. We have statutory protections. There is a push to change our Constitution, as has been done in Kansas, Ohio, and other very red places. So that may be something we have to look at, maybe not.
Thank you. Representative Zeleznikar?
The reality is this is a deeply personal issue. This district has been represented by a pro-life Democrat for 46 years. I'm a pro-life Republican. The reality is we did not see a reasonable bill presented in the state of Minnesota. And when I say reasonable, the bill that we were presented with was abortion with no limitations. Roe versus Wade was 22 weeks. So when we saw that bill come, which was quite shocking, I signed with the Republicans to say, let's bring Roe versus Wade back to Minnesota. Let's do that as an amendment. Democrats said no. I don't think that represents the majority of Minnesota to have no limitations. I support women. I wrote a Support Women bill to equally fund maternity homes, to give people opportunities for adoption, opportunities to have safe places to live, and to explore options. Because when you don't have options, there really isn't choice.
Mark, any response on what was passed?
Well, not what was passed, but what my opponent just said. If you really think that she would have been endorsed by the Republican Party of the state of Minnesota supporting Roe v. Wade, think again. That's an afterthought. That's after Roe was repealed. Oh, we don't like your bill, so we're going to say we support Roe. In an instant, I can guarantee, if that's in a statute supported by the Republican Party, it'll disappear. I would not trust that. I would not put my money on that.
Representative Zeleznikar, final word.
I think if the Democrats were saying they wanted Roe versus Wade, the same argument could be made. Why would you say no? Why would you repeal Born Alive Act? If an abortion happens and the baby lives, why would you repeal that? Those were the extreme measures that we were dealing with. There needs to be a conversation on that. There needs to be a conversation. I'm a reasonable person, I'm a woman. I know 1 in 7 women have miscarriages, people have stillbirth. I could have been that woman easily with high-risk pregnancies. I would never ban abortion for those types of things. We need to have a reasonable conversation. But do we want a policy that looks like North Korea? I looked at solutions of giving people option. I'm not interested in dealing with it at the state level. A decision has been made. I'm telling you what happened. The most extreme was put there. If it goes to the ballot, I think people should be able to choose.
Thank you both. Dan?
Our final formal question before we get to closing statements is, it's another one of those issues that's been lingering around for a while. Sports betting, are you in favor of it? Why or why not? And regardless of that answer, are there other sources of income that you might see that currently aren't passed that might be able to pass? But sports betting's been one that keeps coming up, but it hasn't passed. So for this one, we'll start with Natalie.
I am in favor of sports betting. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. The reality is people are doing it right now. They can go across the borders to do it. They're doing it on the internet. They're doing what they want to do right now. So my perspective is that if we can capture the revenue for Minnesota right now, just like we do for many other things, to fund some of the critical things that we need to do, that I think that it's something we need to explore. And I've been very direct saying, yes, I will look at that. The language, there was a lot of questions with horse racing, and so we couldn't get to the finish line this year because there was a lot of conflict and a lot of discussions that had to happen. But I'm open to reviewing that, and I think it's something that we may have to look at because it's happening across the country.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, here's an area we both can agree. You know, having said that, yes, I would support it, but I want to know what the social costs are in other places that have it. I want to know what those costs for treatment of folks that are addicted. You know, as a district court judge, I saw plenty of cases where folks had gambling addictions and were in places of trust. In other words, they were their local charity's treasurer or their local VFW's treasurer or whatever, and they got themselves into pull tabs, they got themselves into scratch-offs, whatever it might have been. And hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases disappeared from a charity. So that addiction is real. That addiction is no different than drugs or alcohol for some people. So that I think we have to take into account as we go through the discussion, try to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this work? What has worked in other places, what hasn't? I think it has to be a reasoned discussion, but we agree on this point.
What a nice way to end the formal questions. Agreement, that's nice. So that concludes the formal questions. You each have a minute and a half for closing remarks, and then Chuck and I will provide a couple just closing comments ourselves. But we're just going to flip the order from how we started, and Mark, we're going to start first. Again, a minute and a half closing comments from both of you.
So folks have asked me many times, why are you doing this? You had a successful career as a lawyer and a judge. You retired. Why would you want to come back into this political arena? And it's an arena I've never been in. I was elected judge, sure, the first time was a contested race and I ran a campaign and all of that, but this is a whole different bailiwick. It's a whole different place to be at my age and my position in life. The reason I said at the beginning is the same reason I'll tell you now, for our grandchildren. I really do think that I can bring some common sense, some passion, and some integrity back to St. Paul. I think it's been lacking. I think there's been a lot of name calling, a lot of attack ads, a lot of that stuff. And like I said before, I can't control third parties, she can't control third parties. Do I like the flyers that I see that name call my opponent? Absolutely not. I don't support them. I don't endorse them. I wish they'd stop them. I can't control them. But I think I can bring a level of decorum and a level of professionalism, a level of integrity back to St. Paul and represent your interests as voters in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative?
The past 2 years have been an honor to serve, and I, approached this role with the same work ethic that was instilled in me growing up on our family farm. I worked hard for this district. I got 5 bills passed bipartisan to bring important programs for the trades back to the schools, to grow our nursing program. We have a critical nurse shortage. I'm on the ambulance task force. I'm going to Washington with Senator Hochschild the 23rd to the 25th to solve a really critical area that's bipartisan. I looked at working on issues that were bipartisan. And I think that I proved that I could do that. And I think the contrast that we're at right now is clear. I mean, my opponent is endorsed by the extreme far left progressive DFL caucus. And he has identified and defined himself as an unabashed liberal. I don't think that is a definition most of us in this room would say represents the majority of northeastern Minnesota. And on his personal Facebook page in 2022, he stated flat out there's no provision for the right to bear arms. There's no provision, and I don't know what other amendments he would want to change in our U.S. Constitution as a past judge. But I think it's clear that he would be a rubber stamp for what we're seeing as far left positions, and I'm committed to focus on northeastern Minnesota with the values that I believe we share, Democrat, Independent, and Republican, and I'd be honored to serve if you send me back to St. Paul.
Well, we did it on the dot. It's 9:45, so thank you both for staying on time. Thank you all again for being here. On behalf of Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce and the Duluth News Tribune, we purposely want to keep about 15 minutes break in between these. We've got 2 more forums today, both house races as well. But again, on behalf of the Chamber, thank you to the Garden for hosting us. Thank you to our Chamber staff and the DNT staff for their work. Thank you to the audience for being here. And please, let's end this program by thanking our candidates again for making the time for being here. Great job. Thank you very much. We'll see you again at 10 o'clock.
Now here's a look at your forecast, brought to you by the Superior Telegram's history podcast, Archive Dive.
Here's the forecast for the Duluth area on this Thursday. Partly sunny skies are expected today, as well as some breezy winds out of the southeast. Otherwise, afternoon highs hit the low 80s. Strong to severe storms then look to be developing along a cold front, which will be pushing through the region in the afternoon and evening, bringing some potential for damaging winds, hail, and an isolated spin-up or two. Otherwise, quieter weather returns for your Friday, with plenty of sun and highs in the mid-70s. Rain showers and cooler temperatures then return as we head into the weekend. I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist Robert Daly.
Thank you to Archive Dive for their support. The monthly history podcast, hosted by Superior Telegram reporter Maria Lockwood, dips into the archives of historic events, people, and places around Superior and Douglas County. A new episode titled A Tour of Superior's Retooled Schools is now available at superiortelegram.com or wherever you also get this podcast. Thank you for listening to the Duluth News Tribune Minute. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.